Welcome back to story time, guys. So we're doing really well in our story. We have read all of these chapters and now we're on chapter 10, A Crane for Grandma. So actually, if you have a look, we've actually read most of the book now. We've only got the last little bits to go. We have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chapters left. So let's read this one, A Crane for Grandma. Now, at the end of last story session, I asked, why do you think we might need a crane for Grandma? So have a look at the picture. What is the crane doing? It's lifting her out of the house, isn't it? Why didn't they have her to lift her out of the house? Maybe because she's too big, she can't get out any other way. So let's see what's going to happen in this chapter. A Crane for Grandma. Grandma, from high up on the rooftop, could see everything that was going on, and she didn't like what she saw. She wanted to be the centre of attention, and no one was taking the slightest bit of notice of her. George and Mr. Cranky were running around, getting excited about the enormous animals. Mrs. Cranky was washing up the kitchen, and Grandma was all alone on the rooftop. "Hey, you!" she yelled. "George, get me a cup of tea this minute, you idle little beast." "Don't listen to the old goat," Mr. Cranky said. "She's stuck in where she is, and it's a good thing too." "But we can't leave her up there, Dad," said George. "What happens if it rains?" "George!" Grandma yelled. "Oh, you horrible little boy, you disgusting little worm. Fetch me a cup of tea at once and a slice of currant cake." "Oh, we've got to get her out, Dad," George said. "She won't give us any peace if we don't." Mrs. Cranky came outside and agreed with George. "She's my own mother," she said. She's a pain in the neck," Mr. Cranky said. "I don't care," Mrs. Cranky said. "I'm not leaving my own mother up there sticking through the roof for the rest of her life." So in the end, Mr. Cranky telephoned the crane company and asked them to send their biggest crane out to the house at once. The crane arrived an hour later. It was on wheels and there were 2 men inside it. The men climbed up on the roof and put the ropes under Grandma's arms. There she was, lifted up through the roof. In a way, the medicine had done Grandma good. It had not made her any less grumpy or bad-tempered. It seemed to have cured all her aches and pains, and she was suddenly as frisky as a ferret. So it means she was able to move around and she had lots more energy. As soon as the crane had lowered her to the ground, she ran over to George's huge pony, Jack Frost, who jumped onto his back. The ancient old hag, who was now as tall as a house, then galloped about the farm on the gigantic pony, jumping over trees and sheds, shouted, "Out of my way! Clear the decks! Stand back, all you miserable midgets, or I'll trample you to death!" And other silly things like that. But because Grandma was now much too tall to get back in the house, she had to sleep that night in the hay barn with the mice and the rats. So Grandma seemed to quite enjoy being tall, because what does she get to do? Yeah, she got to ride around on the horse, didn't she? She also liked being so tall that she could see everything that was going on. But do you think she likes sleeping in the barn with the mice and the rats? Would you like to do that? I'm not sure I would. It doesn't look as comfy as a nice bed with a nice pillow. So the next chapter is called Mr. Cranky's Great Idea. Let's see if you can maybe write on a piece of paper some ideas what Mr. Cranky's great idea would be. So let's have a go. This is what we do in class, isn't it? So Mr. Need capital C. Make sure I spell it right. Cranky, yep. Mr. Cranky's great idea. Okay, put that in the middle of the camera. Then let's see if you can come up with some ideas of what do you think his great idea would be. Okay, I'm going to give you one example. I think his great idea might be to make more medicine. Maybe that's an idea. Why don't you see if you can think of another good idea? What else could he think of? Try and see if you can do like a little brainstorm like this and think of some, and then tomorrow you can see if your answer was right. Okay, see you tomorrow.